The warning lights flashed red across the command deck of the Human Research Station Meridian as Commander Jake Morrison watched the approaching alien fleet through the main viewport. The ships were massive and sleek, with designs that showed the technological superiority the Galactic Concordat loved to display. Jake had seen these vessels before during diplomatic meetings, but never this many at once and never approaching his station with such obvious intent. The communication panel chirped with an incoming message on official Concordat frequencies. Jake accepted the transmission, and the holographic image of Ambassador Thexali materialized in the center of the command deck. The Xanthari diplomat was tall and imposing, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. Behind him stood representatives from other Concordat species, including the insectoid Vexcar, and the crystalline Morvani collective. Ambassador Thexali spoke without any of the usual diplomatic pleasantries. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he delivered his message to the human commander. The Galactic Concordat had made a decision regarding humanity and their place in the galaxy. After careful consideration and extensive debate, the 12-member species had reached a unanimous conclusion about the human problem. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he listened to the alien diplomat explain the situation. Humanity had been under observation for decades since they first achieved faster-than-light travel and began establishing colonies beyond their home system. The Concordat had initially welcomed humans as a new species to guide and educate in the ways of galactic civilization. They had offered trade agreements and limited membership in various interspecies organizations. However, recent events had changed the Concordat view of humanity. The humans had proven to be unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Their rapid technological advancement, combined with their aggressive expansion into disputed territories, had created concern among the established galactic powers. Several incidents involving human colonists defending themselves against Xanthari raiders had been classified as acts of aggression rather than self-defense. Ambassador Thexali continued his speech, while Jake listened with growing anger. The humans had also made unauthorized discoveries in fields that the Concordat preferred to control. Human scientists had developed faster-than-light communication methods that bypassed traditional Concordat monitoring systems. They had created medical treatments that surpassed anything in the galactic database. Most troubling of all, they had shown an alarming tendency to question Concordat authority and make independent decisions. The ultimatum was simple and non-negotiable. Humanity must abandon all colonies beyond the Sol system within one standard galactic year. They must submit to direct Concordat oversight of all technological development. They must accept permanent quarantine within their home system, with strictly limited contact with other galactic species. The alternative was corrective action by the combined military forces of 12 species. Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward from her position at the science station. The chief xenobiologist had spent years studying Concordat species and building relationships with alien researchers. Her face showed both anger and disappointment as she addressed the Xanthari ambassador. She reminded him of humanity contributions to galactic society, including their role in stopping the void plague that had threatened 3 entire star systems. Lisa spoke passionately about human medical advances that had saved millions of alien lives. She mentioned the peacekeeping missions where human diplomats had resolved conflicts between warring species. She pointed out the agricultural techniques humans had shared freely with worlds suffering from famine. Her voice grew stronger as she listed the scientific discoveries humans had contributed to the galactic knowledge base. The alien representatives listened to her speech with what appeared to be polite attention, but their response made it clear that none of her arguments mattered. The Vexcar hive mind representative clicked and buzzed in their complex language, while the Morvani collective hummed in harmonious tones. Ambassador Thexali translated their concerns about human unpredictability and their rapid rate of advancement. According to the Concordat analysis, humans were expanding too quickly and developing technology too fast for a species of their age. Most galactic civilizations required thousands of years to achieve what humans had accomplished in mere centuries. This acceleration suggested either hidden technological assistance or an inherent instability that made humans a threat to galactic order. Either possibility required immediate containment, Jake asked for time to consult with Earth Colonial Administration and relay the concordant demands to human leadership. He explained that such a major decision would require approval from multiple government bodies and consultation with colony representatives. The process could take months given the distances involved and the complexity of abandoning established settlements. Ambassador Thexali granted exactly 365 standard Earth days for compliance. He emphasized that this deadline was absolute and would not be extended under any circumstances. Any human presence beyond Sol system after the deadline would be met with immediate corrective force by concordant military units. The ambassador made it clear that resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. The alien fleet departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving Jake and his crew staring at empty space where the massive ships had been moments before. The silence on the command deck stretched for long minutes as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. The ultimatum was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. No species had ever been given such an absolute choice between submission and destruction. Jake activated the emergency communication system and sent coded messages to Admiral Ryan Cooper on Earth and to human colony commanders throughout the galaxy. The messages were brief and used predetermined code phrases that would alert human leadership to the severity of the situation without revealing details to any concordant monitors who might intercept the transmissions. Within hours, responses began arriving from across human space. Colony commanders reported increased concordant surveillance around their settlements. Military observers noted unusual movements of alien fleets toward strategic positions. Intelligence analysts confirmed that similar ultimatums had been delivered to every major human installation simultaneously. Dr. Carter worked frantically at her science station, analyzing every detail of the concordant transmission for clues about their true intentions. She had spent years studying alien psychology and behavior patterns. Something about the timing and coordination of this ultimatum suggested planning that went far beyond a simple diplomatic decision. The concordant had been preparing for this moment for much longer than they had admitted. Emergency sessions began immediately across human-controlled space. On Mars, terraforming engineers debated whether their atmospheric processors could be packed and moved within the deadline. In the asteroid belt mining platform, supervisors calculated the cost of abandoning decades of infrastructure development. Colony ships in deep space received orders to alter course and return to Sol system immediately. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Some leaders advocated immediate compliance, arguing that survival was more important than pride. Others demanded resistance despite the overwhelming odds against success. A few suggested attempting to negotiate with individual concordant species to break their unity. Most simply asked for more time to study options that might not exist. Jake stood at the viewport of his station watching the stars and wondering if humans would still be free to travel among them in 1 year. The galaxy suddenly seemed much smaller and more dangerous than it had that morning. Somewhere in the vast darkness beyond his sight, 12 alien species were preparing to enforce their will on humanity. The question was whether humans would submit to that will or find another path forward. Unknown to the concordant, humanity had been quietly preparing for this possibility for decades. 6 months after the ultimatum, massive colony ships appeared at human settlements throughout the galaxy. The vessels were larger than anything humans had built before, with hull designs that prioritized cargo capacity over speed or comfort. News networks across concordant space reported on what they called the peaceful resolution of the human problem. As families began boarding the evacuation transports, Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of her command ship watching the final preparations at New Denver Colony. The agricultural settlement had been humanity's largest food production center in the Centauri sector, with vast fields of engineered crops that could feed millions. Now those same fields would be abandoned to whoever claimed them first after the humans departed. The evacuation process appeared chaotic to outside observers, but Amy knew better. Every movement had been carefully planned and coordinated through encrypted channels that bypassed concordant monitoring systems. The families streaming aboard the colony ship Liberty were following predetermined schedules that maximized efficiency while maintaining the appearance of desperate refugees fleeing. Their homes Amy coordinated with other evacuation commanders through quantum communication links that the concordant had never discovered. The alien observers watching from their monitoring stations saw exactly what humans wanted them to see. They counted ships and passengers and recorded the systematic abandonment of human infrastructure. What they failed to notice was that many of the evacuation ships were not colony transports at all. The vessels designated as civilian evacuation craft were actually advanced military ships, disguised with false hull plating and fake identification codes. Their cargo holds contained not just refugees, but also complete manufacturing systems and technological databases. Their passenger manifests listed families and children, but many of the names belonged to soldiers and scientists carrying weapons. And Research Data General Nathan Brooks supervised the largest deception in human history from his command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Project Nightfall had been in development for 30 years, ever since human intelligence services first detected signs that the Concordat viewed humanity as a potential threat. The project encompassed everything from advanced spacecraft design to dimensional physics research. Dr. Patricia Kim led the Quantum Research Division in completing final tests of technology that made faster than light travel look primitive by comparison. The dimensional fold drives had been under development in secret laboratories hidden throughout human space. The technology allowed ships to step outside normal spacetime and emerge at distant locations without crossing the intervening distance. The Concordat species, celebrated as human colonies across 17 star systems, appeared to empty according to schedule. Zenthari merchants moved quickly to claim abandoned mining equipment and manufacturing facilities. Vexcar swarms investigated sophisticated farming systems that humans had left in perfect working order. The Morvani Collective analyzed the computer systems humans had abandoned, finding them surprisingly advanced but apparently wiped clean. Some alien analysts expressed concern about how cooperative the humans were being. The evacuation was proceeding too smoothly for a species known for their stubborn independence. A few Concordat intelligence officers noted that human behavior patterns suggested careful planning rather than desperate flight. Their warnings were dismissed by the Concordat Council, who preferred to see human compliance as proof of their superior authority. Amy watched Zenthari scouts examining the agricultural equipment humans were leaving behind. The aliens would find everything in perfect condition with detailed maintenance manuals translated into multiple galactic languages. What they would not discover immediately was that the equipment represented technology decades behind what humans actually possessed. The real farming systems were already aboard the evacuation ships. The final month before the deadline saw a careful acceleration of the evacuation process. Human colonies that had taken decades to establish were abandoned in weeks with every piece of valuable equipment and every scrap of useful data carefully removed. The thoroughness of the evacuation impressed even Concordat observers, who had expected humans to resist until the final moment. Captain Rodriguez received her final orders as the Liberty prepared to depart New Denver. The massive ship carried what appeared to be the last human colonists from the Outer Rim settlements. Concordat monitoring stations tracked every evacuation vessel as it departed for Sol system. Their sensors recorded passenger counts and cargo manifests that showed exactly what the aliens expected to see. The watching aliens counted ships and people with the satisfaction of a job well done. The human problem was being resolved without the need for military action. The troublesome species was returning to their home system where they could be properly contained and monitored. The galaxy would return to the stable order that had existed for millennia. Before humans arrived, Admiral Ryan Cooper broadcast to the galaxy from his flagship as the evacuation fleet approached Sol system. His message acknowledged Concordat authority and confirmed human compliance with the ultimatum. He thanked the alien powers for their patience and promised that humanity would respect the boundaries they had been given. The broadcast was received throughout Concordat space as evidence of successful diplomacy. What the Concordat observers failed to detect were the energy signatures building in empty space between star systems. The evacuation ships were not traveling directly to Sol system as their flight plans indicated. Instead, they were making brief stops at coordinates that appeared empty to conventional sensors, but contained hidden facilities that had been constructed over decades of secret preparation. The Liberty rendezvoused with similar ships from other evacuation routes at a station that existed in a pocket of folded spacetime. The facility was invisible to normal detection methods and could only be accessed by ships equipped with dimensional fold technology. Similar stations existed throughout the galaxy, serving as staging areas for the largest mass movement in human history. Amy coordinated the transfer of passengers and cargo from her ship to vessels designed for a very different kind of journey. The people she had evacuated from New Denver were not refugees fleeing to safety. They were pioneers preparing for the greatest adventure in human history. Their destination was not Sol system, but someplace the Concordat had never imagined humans could reach. The final evacuation ships departed their colonies under Concordat supervision, exactly on schedule. Alien monitors recorded their passage toward Sol system, with instruments that tracked conventional faster than light drives. What those instruments could not detect were the dimensional fold signatures that indicated the ships were traveling to destinations far beyond the galaxy itself. General Brooks activated the final phase of Project Nightfall as the last evacuation ships cleared Concordat sensor range. Hidden facilities throughout human space began powering down in carefully orchestrated sequence. Automated systems executed programs that had been written decades earlier to erase every trace of advanced human technology while leaving basic infrastructure intact for whoever claimed it next. The Concordat monitoring stations detected exactly what they expected to see as the evacuation deadline approached. Human ships arriving in Sol system on schedule with passenger and cargo, manifests that matched evacuation projections. The alien observers noted with satisfaction that the troublesome species was complying with Concordat demands. They prepared, their final reports confirming that the human problem had been resolved through diplomatic pressure. Amy stood on the bridge of her new ship watching the stars wheel around them as the dimensional fold drive engaged. The vessel was traveling to coordinates that existed outside the galactic plane where no Concordat species had ever ventured. Behind them, the galaxy grew smaller until it became just another point of light in an ocean of infinite darkness. The evacuation was complete, but not in the way the Concordat imagined. Humanity had not retreated to Sol system to accept quarantine and oversight. They had vanished entirely, taking their technology and knowledge with them. The galaxy would soon discover that making humans leave had been much easier than living without them. 37 days after the evacuation deadline, Concordat monitoring stations detected something that should have been impossible. The Sol system had gone completely dark, not destroyed by weapons or consumed by stellar collapse, but simply empty. Where Earth had orbited for billions of years, there was now vacant space. Where Mars had supported human colonies, there was only silence. The entire system appeared to have been abandoned with surgical precision. Zenthari Admiral Ketvar commanded the first investigation fleet to approach the Sol system. His ships carried the most advanced sensors in the Concordat database, designed to detect any trace of human presence or technology. As his fleet entered the system boundaries, those sensors found exactly what they had been designed to detect: nothing. The investigation teams found Earth intact but completely lifeless. The planet's surface showed no signs of destruction or catastrophic evacuation. Cities remained standing with buildings undamaged and infrastructure functioning normally. The atmosphere was still breathable, and the ocean still reflected blue light from the system's primary star. 8 billion humans had simply vanished without leaving any trace of where they had gone. Admiral Ketvar led a landing party to the surface of what had once been humanity homeworld. The major cities were pristine but empty, with traffic control, systems still operating and power grids functioning normally. Streetlights illuminated empty sidewalks while automated systems continued maintaining buildings that no longer sheltered any inhabitants. The silence was absolute and deeply disturbing. The investigation team searched government buildings and military installations, hoping to find clues about human intentions or destinations. They found detailed records of human civilization, carefully preserved in multiple formats and languages, including translations into Concordat standard. The records covered human history, science, and culture, but revealed nothing about their evacuation plans or current location. Dr. Velnox of the Morvani Collective studied the abandoned facilities on Mars with growing amazement. The thoroughness of the human departure exceeded anything in recorded galactic history. Every piece of advanced technology had been removed with precision that suggested planning over decades rather than the months since the ultimatum. Yet humans had left behind detailed maintenance manuals for basic systems and infrastructure. The crystalline scientist analyzed the empty research laboratories and manufacturing centers that humans had operated on Mars. The facilities were clean and organized as if their operators had simply finished their work and departed for extended leave. Power systems continued operating and environmental controls maintained optimal conditions for equipment that was no longer there. More investigation teams spread throughout Sol system examining the asteroid belt mining platforms and the outer system research stations. Every installation showed the same pattern. Humans had removed their advanced technology while leaving basic infrastructure intact and functional. They had even left gifts in the form of improved agricultural systems and medical equipment that exceeded current concordate standards. The mystery deepened when investigation fleets visited the former human colonies throughout the galaxy. On New Denver, Captain Zixtel of the Vexcar Hive found farming equipment more sophisticated than anything in concordate databases. The humans had been using inferior technology in their trade relationships, while secretly developing systems that surpassed galactic standards by decades. The agricultural equipment left behind on New Denver could produce food yields that were impossible, according to established scientific principles. The soil treatment systems incorporated biological processes that concordate scientists did not fully understand. The crop enhancement technology appeared to operate through methods that challenged fundamental assumptions about plant genetics. Captain Zixtel reported her findings to the Concordate Council, with recommendations that human agricultural technology be studied immediately. The food production systems they had abandoned could solve hunger problems throughout the galaxy. The biological enhancement techniques could revolutionize agriculture on dozens of worlds that struggled with poor soil or hostile climates. Similar discoveries emerged from other former human colonies. Manufacturing facilities that had been considered primitive by concordate standards turned out to incorporate technologies that current galactic science could not duplicate. Mining operations that humans had described as basic experiments were actually using extraction methods that achieved impossible efficiency rates. Dr. Velnox coordinated the analysis of human computer systems found throughout their former territories. The databases had been completely wiped, but the hardware itself revealed capabilities that exceeded concordate understanding. Human computers appeared to process information through methods that suggested breakthrough advances in quantum mechanics and subspace manipulation. Ambassador Thexali convened emergency sessions of the Concordate Council as reports accumulated from investigation teams throughout the galaxy. The scope of human technological advancement had been completely hidden during decades of diplomatic contact. The species that concordate leaders had considered dangerous but manageable had actually surpassed galactic civilization in multiple critical areas. The realization dawned slowly that humanity had not simply complied with concordate demands. They had vanished entirely, taking knowledge and capabilities that the galaxy had never known existed. The evacuation had been planned and prepared for much longer than anyone had realized. Humans had been ready for forced departure because they had been expecting it. Intelligence analysts began reviewing decades of human diplomatic communications, looking for clues about their true intentions and capabilities. The record showed a pattern of carefully managed information sharing. Humans had revealed just enough technology to seem cooperative while hiding advances that would have changed galactic civilization. The review revealed that humans had been tracking concordate military movements and political decisions for decades. They had detailed analyses of each member species, including comprehensive studies of technological capabilities and military weaknesses. The information had not been gathered for aggression, but apparently for protection against the persecution that had now occurred. Long-range sensors detected the first signs that humanity had not simply disappeared from the galaxy. Energy signatures appeared in deep space beyond the galactic rim, using frequencies that matched no known technology in concordate databases. The signatures were massive and growing stronger, as if something enormous was approaching from intergalactic distances. The Concordate Council faced the uncomfortable realization that their ultimatum had not solved the human problem, but had instead created a much larger mystery. Humanity possessed technological capabilities that could reshape galactic civilization. They had vanished completely, taking those capabilities with them. Now something was returning from the void between galaxies. Admiral Ketvar received orders to position concordate fleets at strategic locations throughout the galaxy, in preparation for whatever was generating those energy signatures. The approaching signals suggested ships or structures larger than anything ever built by galactic civilizations. The technology creating those signals was completely unknown to current science. Dr. Velnox analyzed the energy patterns with growing concern. The signatures indicated power sources that should not be possible according to established physics. The approaching objects were using propulsion methods that appeared to manipulate space-time itself. Whatever humans had discovered during their brief absence had advanced their capabilities beyond anything imaginable. The first communication arrived on frequencies that only humans had ever used. The signal originated from coordinates in intergalactic space and carried a simple message that would change everything the Concordat thought they knew about their place in the universe. The transmission was brief and delivered in perfect galactic standard language. The message was from Admiral Ryan Cooper, speaking from what he identified as the Earth Alliance flagship. He announced that humanity was returning to the galaxy and that they were bringing friends. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting that would determine the future relationship between humans and the species that had forced them to leave. Captain Zixtal monitored Concordat fleet movements as ships throughout the galaxy received orders to converge on the coordinates specified in the human transmission. The energy signatures detected by long-range sensors continued growing stronger, suggesting that whatever humanity had found during their absence was approaching rapidly with capabilities that exceeded anything the Concordat could deploy against them. The galaxy waited with growing tension as something vast and unknown approached from the darkness between stars. The humans were coming home, but they were not the same species that had left under Concordat ultimatum. They had found something in the void that had transformed them into a power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. 3 years after humanity vanished from the galaxy, the Concordat faced its first major crisis without human involvement. The Void Plague had returned to the Outer Rim territories, spreading through star systems with the same devastating efficiency that had threatened galactic civilization decades earlier. Without human medical expertise and innovative treatment protocols, the plague spread unchecked, consuming entire colonies before Concordat response teams could establish quarantine procedures. The Xanthari Empire suffered massive losses as the plague tore through their military installations and civilian populations. Admiral Ketvar found himself commanding fleets that were slowly dying as the disease spread from ship to ship, despite all attempts at containment. Xanthari warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against an enemy. They could not fight with weapons or intimidate with threats. The plague moved through Xanthari space following trade routes and military patrol patterns that had remained unchanged for centuries. What had once been considered advantageous infrastructure became pathways for destruction as the disease used established transportation networks to spread faster than containment efforts could match. 3 major Xanthari colonies fell silent. Within weeks of the first reported infections, Dr. Velnox led desperate research efforts to understand and combat the returning plague, using the medical technology humans had left behind. Her crystalline form allowed her to interface directly with human computer systems, but the abandoned equipment proved frustratingly limited, without the innovative thinking that had made humans effective healers. The machines could diagnose the plague but could not adapt their treatments to new variations of the disease. The Morvani Collective deployed their most advanced analytical capabilities to reverse engineer a single human medical scanner that had been abandoned on a former colony world. After months of intensive study, they discovered the device operated through principles that challenged fundamental Concordat understanding of biological science. The scanner appeared to function partially through subspace manipulation techniques that humans had claimed to be still researching. Meanwhile, political tensions escalated throughout Concordat space as member species began assigning blame for the current crisis. The aquatic Merlani Confederation accused the Xanthari Empire of driving away the galaxy most capable problem solvers through aggressive ultimatums. They pointed out that human medical innovations had saved millions of lives during previous plague outbreaks. The energy-based quantum wraiths reminded the Concordat Council that humans had successfully mediated several major interspecies disputes that were now erupting into violence without their diplomatic expertise. Territory conflicts that had been resolved through human negotiation were becoming military confrontations. As old grievances resurfaced without neutral arbitrators to maintain peace, Captain Zixtal received orders to investigate abandoned human research facilities looking for any medical data that might help combat the spreading plague. Her exploration of a facility hidden in the Europa ice revealed extensive archives that humans had somehow overlooked during their thorough evacuation. The discovery raised disturbing questions about what else humans might have left behind. Deep in the Europa archives, Captain Zixtal found evidence that humans had been monitoring concordant military movements and political decisions for decades. The surveillance data was comprehensive and detailed, covering fleet deployments, diplomatic communications, and strategic planning sessions that should have been completely secure. Humans had known far more about concordant activities than anyone had suspected. More disturbing still, the archives contained detailed analyses of each concordant species, including comprehensive studies of biological weaknesses, military capabilities, and psychological profiles. The information had not been gathered for aggressive purposes, but apparently for defensive planning. Humans had been preparing for the possibility of persecution long before any ultimatum was delivered. The medical data in the Europa archives revealed that humans had been studying the void plague and similar diseases with an intensity that suggested they expected the threats to return. Their research notes indicated they had developed multiple treatment protocols and had identified the likely mutation patterns the plague would follow if it escaped containment again. Dr. Velnox analyzed the human plague research with growing amazement at their innovative approaches to biological threats. Human medical philosophy emphasized adaptation and creative problem-solving, rather than rigid adherence to established protocols. Their treatment methods incorporated techniques from multiple scientific disciplines in ways that produced results exceeding the effectiveness of any individual approach. The political crisis deepened as the plague continued spreading, and concordant response efforts proved inadequate without human expertise. Member species began withdrawing cooperation from joint medical efforts as they focused on protecting their own populations. The unity that had allowed the concordant to issue ultimatums to humanity was fragmenting under the pressure of a crisis they could not solve. Long-range sensors detected new energy signatures approaching from intergalactic space, with patterns that matched the mysterious signals detected months earlier. The approaching objects were massive beyond anything in concordant records, and appeared to be using propulsion technologies that manipulated the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Whatever was coming possessed capabilities that exceeded current galactic science by orders of magnitude. Admiral Ketvar received emergency orders to position the surviving concordant fleets in defensive formations, despite the obvious futility of resisting technology that could cross intergalactic distances. The approaching energy signatures indicated power sources larger than entire star systems. The fleets that had seemed overwhelmingly powerful when threatening human colonies now appeared insignificant compared to what was approaching. The first detailed scans of the approaching objects revealed ships of impossible size, accompanied by vessels of completely unknown design. The fleet approaching from intergalactic space included human ships that had grown far beyond anything they had possessed when leaving the galaxy. Accompanying them were craft whose designs suggested technology from civilizations that the concordant had never encountered. Communication attempts using standard concordant frequencies received no response from the approaching fleet. The ships continued their approach, following trajectories that would bring them into the heart of concordant space within days. Energy readings indicated that the approaching vessels possessed weapon systems capable of sterilizing entire star systems if they chose to use them. Captain Zixtal analyzed the approaching fleet compositions and realized that humanity had not simply acquired new allies during their absence from the galaxy. They had somehow established contact with multiple unknown civilizations and convinced them to provide military support. The implications were staggering for a species that the concordant had considered primitively aggressive. Dr. Velnox coordinated concordant scientific efforts to understand the technology being displayed by the approaching fleet. The propulsion systems alone represented advances that would require centuries of research to duplicate. The energy signatures suggested power generation methods that operated on principles completely outside current galactic knowledge. The plague continued spreading through concordant space as member species struggled with the dual crisis of disease and approaching unknown forces. The timing could not have been coincidental. Humanity was returning at the moment when the concordant was most vulnerable and least capable of unified resistance. The species they had forced into exile was coming back with capabilities that made their previous ultimatum seem foolishly arrogant. Admiral Ketvar received the first communication from the approaching fleet on frequencies that only humans had ever used. The signal was clear and powerful, originating from the largest ship in the formation. The voice belonged to Admiral Ryan Cooper, speaking from what he identified as the Earth Alliance flagship, with a message that would change everything. The human admiral announced that humanity was returning to galactic space, and that they were prepared to assist with the current plague crisis. He offered medical support and treatment protocols that could stop the disease before it consumed more worlds. The offer came with conditions that would reshape the political structure of the galaxy. Cooper explained that humanity had spent their exile establishing relationships with civilizations in neighboring galaxies. They had learned technologies and accumulated knowledge that far exceeded anything available in concordate space. They were willing to share these advances, but only under terms that recognized the new balance of power their return represented. The message concluded with coordinates for a meeting where concordate representatives could learn the terms under which humanity would re-enter galactic civilization. The choice was simple, according to Cooper. The concordate could accept humanity as equal partners in a new galactic federation, or they could face the consequences of their earlier decision to force humans into exile. The galaxy trembled as it awaited humanity return, knowing that the species they had underestimated and banished had somehow transformed themselves into a power greater than anything the concordate could comprehend or resist. Admiral Ryan Cooper stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance flagship Destiny, watching as concordate fleets assembled at the coordinates he had specified for their meeting. The human ship dwarfed even the largest Zenthari dreadnoughts, with hull designs that incorporated technologies developed during humanity 3-year absence from the galaxy. Behind the Destiny, an armada of vessels emerged from dimensional fold points, including ships of unknown design piloted by species the concordate had never encountered. The bridge of the Destiny buzzed with activity as human officers coordinated with their new allies. Dr. Lisa Carter now served as Director of Intergalactic Relations, managing communications with civilizations from 17 different galaxies. Her xenobiology expertise had proven invaluable in establishing diplomatic relationships with species whose basic biology operated on principles unknown to galactic science. Commander Jake Morrison had become head of the diplomatic corps after years of building trust with alien civilizations that made the concordate look primitive by comparison. His experience with concordate politics had prepared him well for the complex negotiations required to forge alliances with species that measured their existence in geological epochs rather than mere millennia. The concordate fleet that assembled to meet humanity represented every major military power in the galaxy, but their combined strength was insignificant compared to what approached from intergalactic space. The human allies included the ethereal constructors from the Andromeda Spiral, who had built Dyson spheres around entire star systems in the time it took concordate species to establish single colonies. Admiral Cooper opened communications with the Concordat fleet and explained the situation that had developed during humanity's brief exile. The forced evacuation had become an opportunity for unprecedented expansion and alliance building. While the concordate remained confined to their single galaxy, humanity had discovered a vast network of intelligent species throughout the local galactic group. The humans introduced their new allies through carefully arranged demonstrations of technological capability. The living ships of the Void Singers were biological vessels that treated space travel as a form of artistic expression. Their crews existed in collective consciousness states that allowed them to navigate intergalactic distances by following what they described as the music of cosmic background radiation. The temporal shepherds from Galaxy M87 were beings who experienced time as humanity experienced space. They could move through temporal dimensions with the same ease that humans moved through physical space. Their ships existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, allowing them to be present at several moments of history while maintaining continuous existence. Dr. Carter explained that each alliance had been carefully negotiated based on mutual benefit and shared values rather than conquest or intimidation. Humanity had offered their unique problem-solving abilities and innovative thinking in exchange for technological knowledge and protection. The relationships were partnerships between equals rather than the hierarchical dominant structures preferred by the Concordat. The demonstration of human medical capabilities began with Captain Amy Rodriguez, coordinating the treatment of plague victims throughout Concordat space. The advanced medical technology developed through collaboration with 17 different galactic civilizations could cure the void plague in hours rather than the years required by conventional Concordat methods. The treatment incorporated knowledge from species that had evolved beyond physical existence combined with biological manipulation techniques developed by civilizations that had survived multiple galactic extinction events. Human ingenuity had synthesized these diverse approaches into medical protocols that seemed miraculous by Concordat standards. Captain Rodriguez explained the treatment process to Dr. Velnox and other Concordat medical researchers. The cure required understanding disease as a multidimensional phenomenon that existed across several layers of reality simultaneously. Human doctors had learned to treat not just the physical symptoms, but also the temporal and quantum aspects of biological disorders. The political negotiations began when Commander Morrison presented the Concordat Council with options for their future relationship with humanity and their intergalactic allies. The age of Concordat dominance was over regardless of whether they chose cooperation or resistance. The question was whether they would join the new Galactic Federation as equal partners or face isolation from the broader universe. The terms offered were surprisingly generous considering humanity's position of overwhelming strength. Concordat species could maintain their current governments and territorial boundaries. They would gain access to medical technologies that could extend lifespans by millennia, and manufacturing techniques that could transform barren worlds into garden planets within decades. In exchange, the Concordat would need to abandon their hierarchical approach to interspecies relations and accept the principles of cooperative governance that had allowed humanity to build successful alliances throughout the local galactic group. No species would hold dominant authority over others, and all decisions affecting multiple civilizations would require consensus among affected parties. Ambassador Thexali, who had delivered humanity original ultimatum 3 years earlier, approached Admiral Cooper aboard the Destiny. The Xanthari diplomat had lost much of his earlier arrogance as he struggled to understand how humans had transformed apparent defeat into overwhelming victory. His species had been among the hardest hit by the plague and desperately needed the medical assistance only humans could provide. Cooper responded to the ambassador question about why humans had left such detailed maintenance instructions for the colonies they had abandoned. The human admiral explained that they had always planned to return but wanted to ensure they would be coming back with sufficient strength to prevent future persecution. The negotiations concluded with the establishment of the Galactic Federation, under human leadership but with equal representation for all member species, including former Concordat members who chose to join. The new government structure emphasized cooperative problem-solving and shared technological development, rather than competitive resource exploitation. Many Concordat species accepted the invitation to join as equal partners, recognizing that their previous dominance had been based on controlling access to knowledge rather than superior capabilities. They had learned during humanity's absence that their civilization had become dependent on human innovation and problem-solving abilities. The final demonstration came when human engineers, working with their intergalactic allies, relocated Earth itself back to Sol system from the pocket dimension where it had been safely stored. The planet materialized in its original orbit as if it had never been gone, accompanied by Mars and the other worlds that humans had evacuated during their exile. Dr. Carter coordinated the return of human populations to their original colonies throughout the galaxy. The worlds that had been abandoned 3 years earlier were reclaimed and expanded, using technologies that could terraform planets in months rather than centuries. The agricultural systems left behind were replaced with equipment that could feed billions using resources that would barely support thousands under previous methods. Captain Rodriguez oversaw the establishment of medical research centers that brought together scientists from dozens of different galaxies. The facilities developed treatments for diseases that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia, while also preparing defenses against threats that existed in the vast spaces between galaxies. Admiral Cooper concluded the transition ceremony with an address to representatives from throughout the galaxy. He emphasized that humanity had never sought dominance over other species, but had instead pursued the cooperative relationships that made all civilizations stronger. Their brief exile had taught them that the universe was far larger and more wonderful than any single galaxy could contain. The former concordate species discovered that joining the Galactic Federation provided access to knowledge and capabilities that exceeded their previous achievements by orders of magnitude. The hierarchical system they had used to maintain order was replaced by cooperative networks that proved far more effective at solving complex problems. Ambassador Thex Ali asked Admiral Cooper why humans had been so cooperative during their exile. Negotiations when they obviously possessed the power to resist concordate demands from the beginning. Cooper explained that humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes leaving was the only way to return with the respect and capabilities needed to build something better. The galaxy settled into a new era of unprecedented cooperation and expansion as human. Led alliances opened pathways to civilizations that spanned multiple galactic clusters. The species that had once trembled at the thought of human unpredictability now marveled at their ability to forge connections across impossible distances and build partnerships that transcended the limitations of individual worlds or star systems. The ID transformation was complete, as the galaxy discovered that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or military capabilities, but their unique talent for bringing diverse civilizations together in pursuit of common goals.